So
Let's
let's
see
not forget
here.
Ottawa and Glasgow, also wonderful places.
So you know what, while we're waiting, I'm gonna start with this. I have a poll actually. I'm gonna launch it. And what I'd be interested to know is how many of you are looking to conduct a complete or partial collection survey in 2020. This is a great place to kick off. So you're planning it now, it's already in progress, it's finished, congratulations. No, but we'd wanna do one in 2021 or beyond, or no current plans. And I think this will give us it'd be interesting too to, you know, if other people are currently working on them or planning them, you know, I'm looking forward to kind of having you come into our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give everyone a couple minutes to.
Looks like Sarah is rejoining.
Yeah.
I hope we can resolve her issues.
Oh, well, she can just call in if we need to. That's what I just messaged her.
That's true.
Recommended.
Okay, yes, good point.
And I'll just put this, we just have some pictures to put up while she talks, so.
Yes, that can be the worst case scenario. Good point.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. So how many poll results have we got?
Okay. We're almost done. A couple more people coming in.
Okay.
Anyone else would like to answer? Okay. All right, so let's share. So no current plans is our biggest one. We hope that changes with this webinar. But our actual next two just below that are yes, we're planning one now, or yes, it's already in progress. So that's very exciting. And then after that is we'd like to do one in 2021. So there's almost 100 of you who are either planning, in progress, or looking to do one next year. So that's fantastic. And as Annika was saying, definitely a trend right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely
exciting. Yeah.
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
We can.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep the video off, and hopefully it'll stop trying to kick me off. But I have just sent you the slides, so
great.
that might
and
be
then,
easier.
In worst case, just next time you come back in, just call in on the phone.
Yep, I have my phone set to go. So
perfect.
Great.
Okay. So I'm looking in my Gmail and I don't see it. The slides. I mean.
Oh. Could be my, oh wait, because it's not, oh, there.
Yeah, it might be fighting with your call bandwidth. Okay. All right, everybody, thank you for being patient with our technicalities. So I have the poll up just for another minute while we're getting everything online, then we'll get rolling. So in the meantime, I'm going to introduce Sarah while this is coming through. So our very special guest today is Sarah Frankel, who is a collections manager at Harvard University, specifically for the collection of historical scientific instruments, which she will tell you a little bit more about in just a moment. And as I just mentioned just before, we're very excited to have her on because she conducted an in-depth condition survey based on some very specific circumstances that she'll share with you, that she completed in a very, I would say, innovative way to get things done with a small team. They also were able to get funding out of the collection survey. They were able to deaccession a large number of objects and save space and money, and then, of course, conserve the objects that needed conserving. So I'm very much looking forward to having her share all of this with you.
Yeah,
so Sarah, yeah, all good things, right? So Sarah, why don't you tell us first a little bit more about yourself and your background?
So my background, I've worked in museums and others since I was 14 years old. Started very early as a volunteer at the Smithsonian since I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. I've always been the sort of behind the scenes. My contemporaries really enjoy these. I just wanted to play with them.
Sarah, sorry to interrupt you. The sound is not great. You might want to just call in.
Yeah, I think that would be better.
Yeah. Thank you, Martha.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I will say, this is the first tech issue we've had in many months of this.
That's true.
We're on month 3 of this series, so it's our first technical problem, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, and I do. I recently was a panelist on Monday, actually, for the Art and FinTech webinar series, in which we also had some technical issues using a different platform called Big Marker, and that one just like people couldn't enter, and then there was problems with sound, and it was lots of stuff. So it is an issue. A lot of these platforms are not used to, you know, the numbers and they're straining, I guess. Zoom being one of them.
Right, definitely.
Thank you, Marcia.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Your optimism and your kind words. Well, I am very curious to see also how this kind of these collection surveys play out in these different areas in museums moving forward, especially I think. Oh, hello.
Oh, Sarah? Her video looks a lot better.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's frozen.
Oh, goodness. Sarah, have you got a phone number to call in?
Let me just check what that number is.
Well, while we're waiting, I wonder if in the chat people could indicate if they are planning on doing surveys, what kinds of reasons they think are the most important for doing surveys. You know, what are their goals for doing these surveys? Is it to conserve? Is it to identify priorities for conservation? Is it to identify priorities for exhibition? Is it to deaccession or digitize? Those are some of the top reasons I can think of off the top of my head, but what are there any I haven't mentioned that you think are even more important? What is it that that you think?
Yeah, particularly because we have so many that are currently doing them, right? So check against old document for accuracy.
Ah, okay.
Hi.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Hey.
Sorry about my technical difficulties. I'm not really sure. I'm usually pretty good at this stuff.
No, it seems to be your internet, so I wouldn't worry about it. But I would say if you drop off again, probably call in with the telephone.
I'm actually attached by telephone now.
Oh, perfect. Oh, okay, I meant like with the phone number.
Hotspot.
Mm-hmm. No, I called in on the phone number, but my video is on.
Oh.
Oh,
So
okay. See,
I
you're
think that's
very
how
tech
we're working.
savvy.
Okay, it's working. Anyway, it's working. So,
Excellent.
great. So I introduced you. Well, you couldn't hear me,
Right.
but I was going to ask you,
Okay.
will you tell us, you were talking about your background, if you'll tell us about your background and what you do at Harvard.
Yeah, so my background is collections, and I've always wanted to be part of collections. That has been my interest from the get-go. With a background in anthropology and working on digs, I've always wanted to tend objects. That's always been my goal in museums and museum studies. And I've worked at a number of institutions, from the Smithsonian when I was young to the Peabody here at Harvard, and various other institutions around the country. I've worked in big institutions like the Hirshhorn in DC, or small little historic houses like Ryer's Museum and Library in Philadelphia, which is a wonderful, wacky collection. I tend to like smaller collections, primarily that allow me to get my hands on many different types of collections. So at Harvard, we're a very small collection at Harvard, but we definitely are one of the largest collections of scientific instruments in the country. And basically, I'm the registrar and collection manager there. This allows me to wear many hats and allows me to do many different things. And I love our collection because every object is new. With a background in anthropology, I have no idea what half my objects are, so it's always fun to do learning about them. And I just really enjoy what I do and where I work.
Great. So I give a bit of information about the condition survey you conducted, but will you tell us just why you had to conduct it in the first place, particularly?
Yes. So sadly, our best storage room, we have a number of storage rooms around the building we're currently in. It was involved in a construction mishap, which deposited a layer of construction dust on every single object on open shelving. This necessitated us needing to vacuum every single object before it could be temporarily stored and the room could be renovated. We are a staff of 5 usually, so we did get a contractor consulting with a conservator who would do the work and the vacuuming for us. It was me and one intern who had to provide all the support for a very ambitious project of needing to vacuum over 6,000 objects of various sizes, weights, and complexities.
Wow.
Yeah, that's an undertaking.
It was
kind of everyone's worst nightmare, really.
yes, especially in the beginning, I tried to mitigate it, but nobody wanted to listen to me. So that was also very sad for me. But the one thing it actually did was we needed to touch every single object, move every single object in our storage room, and we took advantage of this opportunity. So while the cause was not necessarily wonderful, the results it produced were fantastic.
That is
Glad
great.
to hear that.
And it's often the way, isn't it, with collection projects? It's like, turning a frown upside down with your disaster response. Getting a much better handle on your, overview and your situation with your...
Well, it's just you could get depressed and upset about it, or you could just go ahead and, take the good with the bad, which is what everybody on our crew did. We were a very tight team, and we worked very, very well together on this project.
Great. So shall I, and by the way, just for everyone else who I didn't introduce ourselves, we have Annika, who is our CEO and founder, who also is a past conservator at the Tate and has worked with the Serpentine and other organizations in the UK. And I am Mackenzie, and I am the head of digital marketing, just in case you thought my name was hello.
And I did surveys at St. Paul's Cathedral in the Architectural Prints and Drawings collection when I worked there, and also at the Royal Horticultural Society and their art collection when I used to work there too.
Yeah. Wonderful. So shall I share my screen quickly, Sarah, so people can get an idea of your collection? Okay.
That would be great. Absolutely.
Wonderful. So this is your exhibition space, right?
Yeah, to give you one of our exhibition spaces is our main permanent gallery. So just to give you an idea of the types of materials we're talking about, they're very small or really, really large. You can see in the lower right, there's an orrery that's solid brass with a clock weight and weighs tons. That's a better detail of it. So not only were these challenging objects to move, now this was our gallery, these are not the objects we had to move, but these are the sorts of things we had to move. And so just trying to track, move things around a building of this complexity and weight added a level of complication to this project.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so, yeah, that's a better view. And again, I just love showing our orrery, which never worked. But yes, thank you for circling that. Those castings were done by Paul Revere. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, you said that the statuary is by Paul Revere, right?
Mm-hmm. Paul Revere did the casting, yes.
Wow.
So we have, again, now here is a lovely shot of our storage room pre-disaster. So we had compactor shelving. Everything was beautifully arranged, organized. If you go to the next slide. Oh, no. Oh, yeah. So this is an example of the project and why we needed to. Sadly, somebody scratched dust in it before I could tell them not to do so. But this does illustrate, and actually used this picture to get funding to show the layer of dust that was deposited on our objects. And I've actually lost the visual, so I'm not sure if you've advanced the slide. But
yeah, dust, and then I'm now on
example.
the conservation.
So the team. So as you can see, the room that they're sitting in is, not a standard workspace. We had to actually utilize an exhibit space that we cleared out for them to work in. And they had to work in very, not the most professional surroundings, but they did a fantastic job. We had 4 conservators who were vacuuming all those objects. So we needed to vacuum 6,000 objects, and we accomplished it in under 2 years, which we were very proud of.
Wow,
amazing.
That is quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, we are very, very proud of ourselves for doing this. I worked many long hours, but it was worth it. And this crew was fantastic to work with. I had hoped actually to get the conservator to speak with me about the project, but unfortunately she's moving today. So she was unable to join us. But basically what this meant is we had to bring objects to the conservators, they would vacuum them, and then they would have to go elsewhere. At the beginning of the project, we were going to use our database for condition reporting. And that would have been incredibly unwieldy. We heard about ArtEvolve and learned it was an iPad-based program, and this really allowed each individual conservator to have an iPad to do their conservation reports. We actually had ArtEvolve design a specific template for us with some of the parameters of the project I'll discuss. So it really allowed them to basically tick boxes and move through these objects very quickly without having to write books or having to write a lot of detail in the reports, but we were able to assess every single object very quickly because of these procedures. So in this process, the conservators would clean every single object, but what they did that was so invaluable long-term for us was they rated every single object. They gave it a number from 1 to 5. 1 being, please conserve this now or else it's going to fall apart, or 5, this is fantastic, it'll last forever. And in doing this, we were able to really divide our collection and get a really good handle on the material in that room and see what we needed to conserve, what we needed to rehouse, what we needed to basically get in a better environment and it would be fine and stable. And it really gave us a good assessment of our collection. And in doing this, I have a really good idea to this day of how to triage my material for preservation purposes. And
Can I
so if
ask?
you want to bring up the, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but can I just ask
Sure.
quickly, how do you have an estimate for how much time you think you spent on documentation per object on average?
On average, the documentation part went pretty quickly since we had all these things set up ahead of time. But then after the conservators assigned it, me and my intern were still entering this into our database with flags and various other things. So I'd say maybe per the actual assessment and original recording was maybe 10 minutes per object. And then maybe on my end, I would say 20 to 40, depending on how complex the object was for additional recording and documentation in the database. But we actually have TMS, which is a little unwieldy for a database, and we've highly modified it to fit our collection. So so that also adds some complexity into the actual documentation in the database.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Jeffrey asked what database to use. So it's TMS, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the
then,
one thing.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh no, the one thing we really enjoyed about the ArtEvolve product was the PDF that I could just batch upload, and I had to do 6,000 in over the course of this project, and it was very helpful as opposed to having to upload photos into the conservation module and have the conservators fill out all the information in the module. So it really streamlined our process a lot.
Great.
Yeah. So full disclosure, everyone who is on here, Sarah did use ArtEvolve for this project.
Yeah. Yes, I did.
That's how we know about this amazing project that she did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'd be interested to know is, because you talked about doing this with a small staff, right? So I think I'm going to pull up on screen now your yellow slips. So why don't you tell us sort of how you organized yourselves with so few people, and how you made that work for you between the technology and your yellow system.
Okay, I've lost the image again, but let me know when it's
okay.
up.
It's up.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. So while we called it the high-tech and low-tech methods. While we did use iPads and ArtEvolve, and that was our high-tech, we also had to track many, many, many different things about these instruments, because while the conservators were assessing condition and preservation things, we also wanted to make sure that we had updated the measurements in the database. It had an updated location. We were able to track this object through the different stages of this project. And what these yellow sheets were used for was to do just that. They were bright in color, so you could always see them. And basically what they have on them is, again, I can't see the image, but they have a recommendation for rehousing. They also have our 1 through 5 designations, and obviously comments, a little box for TMS entry. The back is where the conservator can write problems about the object, more particular that we entered into TMS. And this yellow card followed the object through its movement through the project. Once it was vacuumed, the conservator would initially fill it out with a rehousing recommendation if it needed it, treatment recommendations, and a number. Then when we were doing inventory on this example, you can see there are some measurements scribbled on it. There's TMS entry scribbled on it. So we tracked who did the entry, who did measurements, and then once they were double checked, you can see check marks around it. And I basically used this to track what information we were gathering about each individual objects. Now, if you forward through the slides again, which I can't see.
That's okay, I'm on the microscopes.
Okay, so you can see this is how we laid them out. Our curator was taking the opportunity to actually do more in-depth inventory since we were pulling all the microscopes out and they hadn't been properly inventoried. So we would lay them out, and she would write additional notes on the yellow sheets that she wanted entered into TMS.
Mm-hmm.
And then they followed onto the cart when they were going down for storage. So that's the next slide. And then the following slide, you can see this is our temporary storage. These yellow cards remain with the objects. Well, in particular, the ones that need additional conservation or rehousing. So I don't have to find my database when I'm down in storage and figure out, oh, what was the problem with this guy? What's going on? Now, we can use ArtEvolve for that, which we do a lot. But also this yellow card is sort of a snapshot of what's going on with the object. And this has been so invaluable that actually right now that we're all working from home, I have another staff member who wasn't working on this aspect of the project originally, reviewing our yellow cards and going over the data we entered from them and making sure it was all there or is consistent. And we've actually learned you know, that we did gloss over some information. They raised some more questions that we weren't sure about groupings of objects. So these yellow sheets continue to be a resource for us and will be part of the object record eventually when I can go back in and file them all away.
So a lot of the information that was on here was what you were writing down to go into your database TMS, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's sort of a snapshot of what we were adding to the record in the database itself.
Yeah, and I think what was so sort of low tech but very smart about doing this, particularly with a small staff, was you know, that a lot of these objects, you said you had many duplicates in some cases, right? That you had to differentiate from one another. So this was how you did that, right?
Absolutely, and not only that is, I'm sure a lot of people I'm speaking to are not very familiar with scientific instruments. But we have a lot of duplicate objects. Some of them were commercially made, but one was a prototype and one was the one commercially available. So, so basically, these also allowed us to distinguish between these sort of iterations of what on the surface looked like exactly the same thing, and bring them to the curator. Okay, this one's commercially available. Do we need to keep this if we have the prototype? So things like that, I could just give her the yellow sheets for evaluation, and she can make these assessments sort of on the spot that allowed for a shorter process and the deaccessioning sort of process we've gone through.
Right. So I think, you know, that's important for those who are on the webinar who may focus more on art where you can look at it and you know exactly what it is. Whereas with some of these other objects or cultural heritage, it can be more difficult. So, you know, kudos for being able to figure out a sort of a good solution to manage that with a small team. So what I'd like to talk about now is a little bit about your jackpot. So you can share that on the screen.
So if you share that on the screen, this object has the dubious honor of being one of the weirdest objects. It's called a galvanometer. It's a measuring instrument, but its importance to us was primarily that it had, according to one of our conservators, pretty much every type of corrosion an object could get. It's got bakelite, it has multiple types of metals, and it was a real big mess. And also, it was an old object. It had a really good provenance, and so it was a slightly important object, and it was in really, really bad shape, and due primarily to poor environmental conditions. So we used this object in two ways. One was we used it to illustrate how a bad environment affects the object, because we actually had pictures from 10 years prior of the object in not this bad shape. And the other thing we did is we've had a number of donors who have helped us out with sort of behind the scene projects, and using sort of our evaluation with our numbering system and a few choice objects like jackpot, we were able to actually present a conservation plan and also get funding. And it was very important to have sort of the original triage of the object numbers and how many were in danger, but also the images. The images were really powerful and really showed how proper environments or proper storage or even conservation could really preserve our collection. And this was sort of, we call it jackpot because of the number of corrosions, but also after the fact because it did help us raise some money, which we are now using to conserve about, I think, 20% of our #1 problematic objects.
Oh, great. So the funding went towards more than just the jackpot, right?
Yes, the jackpot was a great illustrator, but we were able to communicate that the need was greater than a single one or handful of objects. It was a percentage of the collection that really needed assistance.
Yeah, and from a marketing perspective, you know, I think looking at collection surveys and the reports that you get out of them, so the condition reports, as storytelling, right, for your donors, is really important.
Absolutely.
Because you said this was the cover of your conservation report, right?
Yep, this was when our main conservator was writing up the final report for submission. We actually did discuss this. We found a number of objects that were very, even if you're not a museum person or if you're not necessarily conversant with corrosion or problematic conditions in an object, we found a number of pictures, a red rot, leather case, things like that were very obviously not healthy objects. And jackpot really is a great illustrator of an object that is not in good shape.
So let's see then. Oh yes, close up of the corrosion.
Look at that.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. Everyone, all of the conservators are going in the background.
Yeah, exactly. Collection managers should be too.
Can I ask, has your team or who is responsible for making the report itself? Was it conservators or was it you for funding?
So the final report was the conservators, but the report to our donors for funding was primarily me with input from the conservators. I was writing in very general terms, but I always like, because not being a conservator, I like to make sure I'm actually using the right terminology or getting the concepts correct. So I always run the technical aspects past our conservation team.
And
Sure.
do you have a lot of experience with making fundraising type reports before this point? Have you done that a lot in your career?
Well, not so much in the bigger places. I've worked, as I mentioned, a lot of smaller historic houses, and I've worked with friends groups, and I've worked with sort of more grassroots fundraising than actually donor relations. And I really find that people respond well to the sort of peek behind the curtain, which I know we're not supposed to use these sort of terms that make the back of the house seem hidden or special or exclusive. But I always find that people really enjoy seeing storage or seeing what it is collections do, because it gives them a better understanding of the larger organization as a whole. And these problems, these conservation problems, really appeal for fundraising because usually they're very obvious, like a jackpot or something that's broken or a really bad. For example, we had I worked at Ryer's Museum and Library outside of Philadelphia, and in the past, I believe in the 70s, they had an artist redo a painting. And it wasn't a conservator, it wasn't done by conservation standards, and it was awful. It was really a really bad, I don't even know what it was. She basically painted over the original portrait. And we actually did some great fundraising with the help of a conservator. We actually did some X-ray assessments and showed what was underneath and all sorts of great stuff like that. And we actually managed to raise enough money to bring in a conservator to remake this picture. And it was a wonderful experience for me. And I kind of like that sort of fundraising, is going out to the community, making them interested or invested in an object, and also in the repair or conservation of an object that they could identify with.
That's fantastic. The reason that I'm asking about it, and I'm curious to know also what the audience thinks about this, because we're currently considering adding a kind of reformatting of condition and treatment proposal data into a fundraising profile, potentially for crowdfunding or for reports for appealing to donors. And so if anyone is kind of interested in what that might look like or entail in the future, please ask a question or get in touch with us, because this is something that we're thinking about. Because I agree with you 100%, and in my own professional experience as well, I did a fundraising for conservation of about 750 Chinese export paintings when I was at the Royal Horticultural Society, and it really got my kind of passions up, right, for this collection,
Right.
because it was falling to pieces. It was very popular with our commercial licensing clients, so it was like getting on wallpaper and body lotion bottles and all kinds of stuff, but we were handling it in order for it to be used in that way,
Right.
and the money was going straight to the general RHS pot, and they were telling me at the same time, we can't afford to conserve it. And I was like, oh, really? What about all the money it's making for you right now?
Right.
And so it was frustrating. And eventually, by doing exactly what you're saying, really telling the story of it, doing research on it, getting percentages, a lot of hard work. We did eventually get it fundraised for, but that is a lot of hard work and effort, and specific skill sets and storytelling and marketing and all the rest of it. And we've learned a lot, because we've also done investment funding for Articheck for investment. And through that process, and also through our monthly board meetings and quarterly shareholder reports, we've learned a lot about kind of what business people want to hear. Quantitative analysis and benefits analysis and all that kind of stuff. And so, and also with Mackenzie and having this kind of digital marketing expertise on board now, are really interested in kind of providing the museum sector with this kind of skills, and also repackaging and saving time in terms of producing these reports. So, so anyway, sorry to go on a tangent, but I would love to discuss, Sarah, with you further about kind of the fundraising report kind of aspects in particular, maybe offline, so we can brainstorm.
No, I think just making people invested really really does help. And I think making that appeal personal, and to a smaller audience, or people you wouldn't necessarily have asked for money, but could give a little bit towards a project they're interested in, is sort of the way fundraising is going these days. And I think museums have a lot to offer in that respect, to get people interested in their collections that way, and it brings them into the institution as well.
Totally.
Yeah,
I really agree.
So, hot topic in the museum world these days, and collections in general, deaccessioning. So how did you use this collection survey for deaccessioning purposes?
So prior to this, like most museums, we're at capacity, and every time our curator wants to collect something, I say no because we don't have any room. Scientific instruments also tend to be huge. We collected 3 Atwood machines. Yeah, I don't expect anyone to know what they are, but they're very tall and skinny, about 8 feet tall, with pendulums, so they're a little tippy. And I mean, they're wonderful, and I'm glad we collected them, but I now have to find a place for 3 8-feet tall things. And there was tension between us. And there tends to be in a lot of institutions between curator and collection manager about space and prioritizing what goes where. But our curator knows our collection really well and has a very strong sense of what belongs according to mission in our collection. So I always sort of have her make those ultimate decisions because it is her decision what will enhance the collection. But through this survey, what we were able to do is we were very easily able to isolate and identify a lot of things that had been accessioned as part of larger accessions or weren't necessarily as vital to the mission. We came across, as I was telling Kenzie the other day, twice in different spaces, large boards with nails hammered in them. And nobody knew what they were for or what they were a part of. So because they had very little provenance information, my curator said, yeah, get rid of them. And I made a lot of shelf space available for the eventual move back into the space. And what this also did is this allowed us a more immediate conversation about how to deaccession, and actually really improved our working relationship. And she understood sort of my concerns better. And I really respected her knowledge and understanding of the collection better because we worked so closely on this effort. And we did actually deaccession a number of things, a goodly number of things, and has also made the collection tighter and more directed. So,
Right.
so it was just win-win as far as deaccessioning went on this project.
And it seems like a lot of people are going to have to consider deaccessioning over the next couple of years, right? I mean, I think that's in the cards.
Yeah.
And probably a really good thing to be doing, because not only for the reasons that people might think of first in terms of you know, space, making way for more acquisitions, but and also potentially raising money and tough times ahead, but
Right.
also in terms of carbon footprint. You know, everything that's stored, and especially, you know, a lot of institutions have hundreds of thousands and even millions of objects, and there's a very high, you know, carbon footprint cost for that as well. And, you know, now that we're all getting to grips with the fact that we're in a climate emergency, I think it's a really good idea to try and be lean, and to think about our purpose and mission, you know, as museums. If there's things which are going to be in storage and nobody's even going to see them, you know, for 50 years, but we're going to keep them in perfectly climate controlled conditions, you know, with the carbon cost of that. I mean, does that make sense, you know? So and also, just as you mentioned, the kind of the focus that it gives you to really focus on your strengths and be lean. And I think
no, it really directs you when you can look at even just a section, because this was about a third of our collection that we looked at, or maybe a quarter of our collection, but we looked at it as a unit too, of space it took up, why did we collect it, why was it here, and as a unit, sort of this assessment of what's in good shape, what's in terrible shape, really allowed us to sort of direct also environmental recommendations for the renovation of our space. How did we want to gear more towards metals, toward leathers, toward other different type of materials? And we could really sort of assess what were the most at-risk materials we had in the collection and what we needed to tend better environmentally. So that was another thing it allowed us to look at.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the one other thing I remember you mentioned to me about deaccessioning is that you also had hazardous things you had to deaccession.
Yes, so that is a danger of scientific instruments, which I actually learned on the job. Nobody warned me ahead of time. But primarily, especially in anthropology collections, you have mercury and other things like that were used as preservatives. We don't have that so much. We have hazardous materials that were actively part of the object itself. We have a number, I didn't include any because I didn't think to, but I love showing pictures of the mercury we have, or asbestos in particular was wrapped around chemistry glassware to protect it from fire and cracking. So we have a number. Yeah, we also have historic Civil War era medicines, I think. I don't know why. We also have various substances that were used in pressure experiments, radioactive materials, things like that, that I didn't really have to worry about in previous job experiences. But we do have a room where we isolate all this material, we thought. And in this assessment, we actually found materials that had mercury, asbestos, and other things that needed to be removed from this sort of, we actually bring researchers and classes into this room, so we should have no hazardous materials in a room where we bring the public, so to speak, into our spaces. And in fact, we found this one thing during, it was just a display case of minerals, but the conservator unscrewed the lid of it, and all of a sudden mercury balls started falling out. And it probably in the past, somebody spilled mercury over it, or it was in a lab and got contaminated, and this definitely needs to be isolated and cleaned before it could be, you know, observed. So knowing that there are hazards in your collection, an assessment like this will pull out things you didn't notice beforehand, or you thought were minor, but by comparison should have been isolated in the past. So
Wow.
yeah, scientific instruments have some very interesting challenges to them.
Absolutely, and good housekeeping is particularly essential. Sounds
Yes,
like.
indeed it is. And not
Just found
sending
that
people
so
near
fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, Sarah, we're coming to the end of our time together,
Yep.
but I wanted to ask you, we can go over a couple minutes, and I just wanted to ask what advice you would give to other collections managers, conservation professionals who are planning or in process of their own condition collection surveys.
I would say play to your strengths and know your staff and their capabilities, and be creative. What I found at the beginning of this project, I sat down with my staff. I know them very well, my interns, my rehousing expert. And I basically outlined the sort of responsibilities I thought we would have in the project. And we let people choose what they were interested in helping with or in doing. And we broke down the work by people's strengths. So, and that worked really, really well because it reduced the need to micromanage, which I don't do anyways. But we allowed people to, first of all, get invested in the project, but also I knew I could trust my rehousing person. She was making boxes. There we go. That's her specialty. I don't have to check in on her. She knows even better than I what she's doing in there. So this sort of discussing beforehand and planning accordingly really worked well because we were able to just sort of jump in feet first. ArtEvolve really helped once we got our template up and running. You know, there was sort of these underlying categories that the conservators and I were both agreed on that we didn't have to constantly, oh wait, is that a 3? Do you think that's a 3 or a 5? You know, we'd already outlined all that from the get-go. And honestly, the yellow sheets came from, I was labeling things with object numbers with bright colored paper, so the person shelving them would know what we were moving around. And then that evolved into this paper that we could track all of this information on. So I would say that while computers are great and there are a lot of things, I have a whole lot of ideas I can help people with, and I'm very open to people contacting me if you have any particular questions. But I think really knowing your staff and being creative with your available resources and thinking on your feet, and also constantly checking in with your staff to see if they have any suggestions on how you can streamline things, and also just trusting your staff to know that they know what they're doing really helped us in this project as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, we have
Sarah's,
some, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say Sarah's being quite modest because she is a DIY queen of knowing how to do, it's true, of knowing how to do collection storage and management. So if anyone is working with a smaller collection, I highly recommend talking to Sarah, and she'll probably give you some great ideas.
Many recommendations for how to reuse, find extra materials that you can afford, and various other things. So yeah, feel free to contact me directly, and I'm always happy to talk collections because I love what I do.
Oh, well, that's a wonderful resource for people. And we've got a few questions and comments
Sure.
I've noticed that we should maybe address.
Sure.
I
First,
think,
I'm just going to post, this is the link to the website for the collection, and then this is the link to the database. So if anyone's interested in checking out more information about the collection and Sarah's work.
so
Go ahead,
one
Anna.
thing that Judy Steinberg mentions in the chat is would like to see custom Articheck template. Firstly, custom templates are certainly possible in the Articheck system. Sarah had her own custom template made for this particular project. We're very able to do that for very specific projects that are unique to a particular organization. But we do also have an optional template, one for surveys and one for custom fields. The issue with the custom fields template is that you have to define the fields with each report. So it doesn't save the
Right.
the custom field title that you gave it with the previous report. So in terms of speed, it is a lot better to just have a custom template made through us for you. But if you have like different fields that you want to add for different purposes on a kind of day-to-day basis, then the custom field section is useful for that.
Right.
So, but our custom template we've made it very easy for us to add it, so it's not expensive and it's just a one-off cost. Now,
Right.
from the Q&A, we've got a few. Mackenzie, which do you think we should go with first?
Let's start with Ruth. So Ruth asks, I would like to know if they made a value or significance assessment at the same time, and in that case, what method or rating they used. Did you do that, Sarah?
No, we didn't. Previous to this project, our curator had actually done an overall insurance value assessment, simply because we needed to go to the insurance company with a value on our objects. So we had actually, in essence, done that before the project started. But if we had been, if we hadn't done that beforehand, I don't think we would have done that as we went, as we weren't really looking for individual valuations. We were just assessing for condition and preservation.
Gotcha. So Ruth, if you are interested in talking about that, I'm sure we have other use cases for that. And also a lot of condition reports in Articheck are used for assessment insurance purposes. So we'd be happy to chat if you'd like to reach out.
Yeah, and maybe put you in touch with some other people doing surveys. For example, Eton College is doing a survey of their entire collection. And I was chatting with them recently. They were able to do 800 reports in 11 days with one person. So yeah, it was very impressive numbers. So they've got it. They've got a slick operation over there, of course, involving Articheck. But not TMS. They use Collection Index Plus over there as their database.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, so should we mention the top?
Loredana?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Loredana says, I'd be interesting to know why TMS wasn't sufficient for this survey. Does your organization have the Conservation Studio tool? Could you comment, please?
So it's not that it wasn't sufficient, it wasn't straightforward. There are a number of steps in the conservation module in TMS to move things along. And also our conservators weren't very familiar with TMS, so that would have entailed training and a larger learning curve, as well as batch uploading of the images. So there would have to be the photography separate from the condition reporting. I'm not sure, we have an older version of TMS, so I'm not sure what newer versions look like. Also, ours is heavily modified, so I'm not sure how standard our version of TMS is any longer, because we modified it to fit the sort of parameters of a scientific instrument collection as opposed to an art collection. And we've run into a few issues with that.
Okay.
Understood.
So also, any recommendations for institutions with no conservators on staff? We capture general condition info, during inventory, but don't have the resources to complete a survey without outside resources and funding?
So what I would say is this sort of ranking system might be a good first step and may allow for fundraising or for bringing in a conservator for your most worrisome objects. Because you don't need a conservator to say, oh, that's terrible, but that should be okay. And ranking the needs of the objects into groups like this is a really good first step to bringing in conservation professionals to further conserve the collection or protect the collection.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I think on that note, we've just released the summary PDF that in our program. So it's like a one-pager in Articheck that just has pictures and the basic condition. So that way, if you are, trying to do this in a very quick and snappy manner, you can sort of have all of these one-pagers of the objects that you're working with. And then you can do full condition reports by updating those once you're able to fund a conservator. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I missed the point about how the dust originally got in. Presumably it was circulated by the AH system.
Yes.
Just surprised how much got into
Yes,
the roller racking.
So there was a construction mishap, and our not great environmental system was very great at moving air around the objects. So it took the construction dust and literally evenly distributed it across all the objects in that long, narrow room. And it was kind of amazing because we thought, oh, okay, just the objects near the event would be affected. And we went all the way to the back of the room, the opposite side of where everything happened. And it was just as substantial back there as it was in the front. So sadly, yes, our HVAC system did contribute to the even distribution of construction dust.
It's a very diplomatic way of speaking about construction dust.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta be diplomatic.
Yeah, and then Judy, let's see. Judy's curious about the batch uploading of photos.
So I'll be in touch with you, Judy, about that.
Yeah.
With some more details, and also Catherine would like us to share information about the Art and FinTech webinars. So
yes,
certainly we can do that. I think, have you got the website handy?
I have, if you go to their Instagram, it's at Unfold Bricks. I just put it into the chat. So Catherine, if you're still here. And then let's see, Beatrice said, I've had this once when there was a fire in the building next to the collection room. So soot, not dust.
Ooh, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah. All right. So great. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was
no problem.
Very in-depth and interesting. And we looked at it from all of the angles. And
well, sorry about the technical difficulties.
Well,
no, it's okay.
We got them resolved, right? And
okay.
Just a few minutes. But thank you so much for helping out and coming to talk to us about this. It's really, really interesting, and I think very kind of timely for people to be thinking about at the moment for the next year or two.
Yeah,
they're planning.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, well, we are done with our ArtEvolve weekly webinar for this week. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And we'll send out a recording and highlights tomorrow if you'd like to share it with anyone else in your organization or beyond. And we will see you all next week. Thank you again, Sarah. Thanks, Annika.
Great.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mackenzie.
Bye.
Bye.